Welcome to a new episode of CrossTalk, the 6th Plymouth District edition. Joining us is State Representative Josh Cutler, who represents the communities of Duxbury, Pembroke, and Hanson. Now, of course, as you know, that will change as of 2023, but right now we'll just say that's what the 6th Plymouth District is. Representative, welcome back to the program, sir.
Hey, Kevin, it's great to be back. Thanks for having me. Yeah, I don't want to, Halifax and Marshfield joining my district. Really excited about that too. So shout out to those precincts.
Indeed.
But glad to be back. I'm here at the State House. So hopefully there's a little bit of construction going on outside on Bowden Street there. So hopefully that doesn't interfere with our chat here, but glad to be here at the State House. And we have a busy day coming up today.
Yeah, before we get started in on our topics, you actually have a special guest from your district who's actually going to be stopping by the State House and making an appearance in the House, right?
Yes, we do. We have a special guest, actually Representative Allison Sullivan and I are jointly invited a student named April Keys, who's just graduated from Whitman Hanson Regional High School. April was the class valedictorian and gave a remarkable speech during graduation. She's been very open. April has a speech impediment and overcame stuttering for throughout her academic career, and was able to find the courage and determination to give the graduating speech, and really did a remarkable job and was really inspirational. And there's a video you can watch. It's really something to see. And she got a standing ovation. So we thought it would be nice to recognize her for kind of overcoming that adversity and showing the world how amazing she is and talented. So we invited her up to the State House, and we're going to recognize her today in the House chamber right before our formal session today. So that'll be a nice moment to recognize a young student from Hanson who's really doing some great things.
Yes, and it's a great way to start off our program, is recognizing the talents of this young lady and her bright future that she has ahead of her.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And it's I know there's a few things you wanted to talk about, Kevin, but I did want to mention the other thing we'll be doing on a more substantive note today is we're taking up a transportation bond bill, which has some important funding for the MBTA. Folks may, be following what's going on there, and obviously some of the safety concerns and equipment issues that we've seen with the MBTA. And so we are providing some funding in a bond bill to kind of address some of those issues. Also, we're going to be hosting an oversight hearing to kind of have a little take a hard look under the hood, I guess, so to speak, at some of the issues that are going on there, and ensure that we have accountability and for what's going on. So big bill today. And one of the things I wanted to mention that I filed an amendment for, which was something that was suggested to me by one of my constituents, was to address some of the rush hour traffic that we see. Unfortunately, for those of you who commute into Boston, the traffic is back, and in many ways it's worse than before. I think in many ways. I think partially because some folks are not back to taking public transportation and they're driving, and at least it feels like there are more cars on the road than there were pre-COVID. It feels like that to me when I drive in here. But anyway, concern. So I have an amendment in the transportation bond bill, Kevin, to as we know, rush hour traffic isn't just Monday through Friday, especially in the summer months. We see rush hour traffic to and from the Cape, and so my amendment would instruct the Mass Highway to accommodate and make changes to adjust for rush hour traffic coming to and from the Cape, such as sometimes happens on the weekends. So just a small way to try to help alleviate the traffic burdens that we see, especially in the summer months, people, heading down there for the weekend and coming back up. We see a lot of bottlenecks. So we're trying to take some small steps to address that traffic issues that we see, and hopefully reinvest in the MBTA and get more people comfortable taking the MBTA again and using our great commuter rail system that we have, and the T and our bus system. So that's what's on the docket today.
Well, I know that you have long been a champion of public transit. I know there were concerns about them cutting service, and that yourself and other local legislators had attended meetings saying, please keep the extended hours to be able for folks who use public transportation. Now we have an issue with the federal government cutting back, wanting the state to cut back hours and availability because of issues. Does this transportation bill address any of that?
Yeah, so absolutely. And again, thank you for pointing that out, because, one of the things that we've tried to do, and I remember going back to my first term now, was we had seen here in the South Shore our weekend commuter rail service. We were the only region that had commuter rail service that had seen our weekend service cut. And so when I was elected, came into office, I was sort of took that up as a priority for me. Obviously, in my district in Hanson, we have a commuter rail station, or neighboring areas, Halifax as well. We have in Whitman, of course, we have commuter rail stations. And so we worked together when we got a good coalition of lawmakers throughout the South Shore, bipartisan coalition, and we successfully petitioned the MBTA and pushed them and forced them to resume weekend service on parity with the other areas of metropolitan Boston that have weekend service. And so that was an important victory, and it's been in effect since then. We've seen some ups and downs overall with the MBTA services. We have, I want to give a shout out to a constituent of mine, Richard Prone, who probably is familiar to some listeners and viewers of your show, who's been very vocal throughout the years about MBTA commuter rail service. I don't know if you can hear that siren going off in the background. My apologies. Again, I'm in the State House here, so I can't control the ambient noise sometimes. But so really continuing to push that, doing family-friendly fares, trying to do reduced fees for parking, trying to make our commuter rail service more appealing to folks. You would also ask the question about sort of the broader issues, some of the safety issues that the federal government had recently raised, and this really gets back to one of the things that really is something I've been working a lot on as the chair of the Committee on Labor and Workforce Development. Is one of the big issues that the MBTA is having is having enough staff, qualified staff and engineers, conductors, and so forth to cover all the services. And that's one of the bottlenecks that's leading to some of these issues that we're seeing that the federal government has identified. So we know that's a challenge. We know it's a challenge across every industry, private sector, public sector. We're in a labor shortage. And we're taking a lot of steps to try to address that. I think that's only part of the equation here with the MBTA. A bigger part of it, I think, is just management of it and the funding of the infrastructure, so that we don't have aging trains and aging subway cars that require constant maintenance and going offline. And so we've taken a number of steps over the past few terms to try to support the MBTA, ensure they had funding. There's going to be an important ballot question on the ballot this fall, the so-called millionaires tax, where the revenue from that would go partially to our transportation system. But today's action in our transportation bond bill, which the House is taking up, will provide authorization for funding for some improvements to the MBTA and allow them to continue to upgrade the cars and the subway lines to ensure that we're not just deferring our maintenance as we've unfortunately happened in the past, so that we can have a more reliable public transportation system, which, whether you're a driver or a commuter rail person or however you get to work, we all have a stake in having a robust, reliable, safe public transportation system. Even if you're driving on the road, you're impacted by this too, because your traffic will go up if we don't have that. So it's in all of our interest to support that, and it's something that I think the House is really has long prioritized, and I know the Senate and the governor do as well. So we're going to be taking some important steps on that today with the transportation bond bill.
Transportation is important. So is mental health. Can we talk a little bit about some legislation that was passed in regards to mental health?
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's a good transition. We've seen, I think, obviously mental health is something that's important anytime, but we've seen throughout, as we emerge from COVID, the increased awareness and concern about mental health frankly, of everyone, especially our youth, but frankly, everyone. I know just from talking to folks in my district who work in that field, they're just inundated with people wanting help and reaching out. And so, there's a lot of different things we can do to try to address that. One of the things we did already is allow insurance parity for telehealth for mental health, so that, if you're doing a session like via Zoom, like we're doing right now, insurance can still cover that. And so that was an important change in policy that we made to make it easier for people to get mental health services via Zoom. And we know that just just from experience that has proven quite effective, and it's been a very positive step. So anyway, the House recently took action. Just last week, we had a major mental health bill that we put forward that was approved in the House on a bipartisan, unanimous basis. Credit to Chairman Adrian Madaro of East Boston, who really did a lot of work on this piece of legislation. And there's a lot to it. I have a pretty good summary of all the different parts of it in my website. I just want to mention a couple parts of it that I think are worth noting. One is that it would help to allow everyone to get we all know about going in once a year to get your physical, blood pressure, check your weight, all those things. Some things, information we maybe don't want to know, but all important information we do need to know. But this bill would allow for an annual wellness check. So same kind of thing, just an annual behavioral health wellness check to go along with our physical. I think that's an important thing to think about, as mental health is not just an acute thing where when you're in crisis that you get help. It's something you should always be concerned about and always be kind of keeping an eye on. And so having an annual wellness health that's covered by insurance will really be an important step forward to get all of us thinking about this. I think that's important. So the legislation includes that. It has stronger language in terms of parity to ensure that our laws are covering not just, our physical health. If you break an arm, obviously, there would be no question that you would get insurance coverage to go to the doctor. But, if you have anxiety, depression, whatever the mental health issue that you're going through, that you can get coverage for that. And ensuring that we have parity in our insurance coverage laws to ensure that you're not having to overcome insurance company hurdles to get that kind of care is important. So the bill includes some important language on that. Also includes, trying to strengthen our services for adolescents. We know, that has been a huge issue. And I have kids that age, and, I think every parent, we're all concerned about that and wanting to make sure our kids, we have a lot of stresses on our kids already, and COVID was a big one. And so trying to make sure we're doing everything we can to address adolescent mental health is a big part of this legislation as well. Another key plank on this is making sure we have, the workforce to support that. When you need help, you want to make sure there's a doctor or a therapist or a clinician who's available. And so trying to make it easier to get into this field, to address some of the licensing issues, to encourage people to go into the mental health profession. I know, most people don't do it to get rich. They do it because it's a great profession. It's an honorable profession, and we want to do everything we can to kind of help, nudge that along. So one of the things that I did want to mention with that is a particular amendment that I had filed along with Representative Lenatra. And it gets a little bit into the weeds, but I think it's worth talking about. Licensed mental health counselors, we call them LMHCs, are one of the, along with social workers, are one of the, the very important cogs in our mental health system. And when you go to, make an appointment for therapy, many times you'll be talking to an LMHC. Could be a social worker, could be some other professions, but oftentimes it's an LMHC. And we've seen with our state licensing board, what's called the Allied Mental Health Board, that does the licensing. So this is something you have to get your license and keep it up and renew it, and when you're newly licensed, you have to go before the board and get it approved and so forth. And just because of the way the numbers shake out, there were only 2 LMHCs on this 13-member Allied Mental Health Board, and so that was causing a real backlog, Kevin, of people who were trying to get renewals or new applications to be licensed mental health counselors were getting delayed. And obviously we don't want to see that anytime, but we certainly don't want to see that right now when we're in a mental health crisis and we really need every practitioner out there. So we are taking steps through our amendment that was successfully passed to add some LMHCs to that board and expand that board so we can sort of expedite the workflow to allow them to process all the applications and do the work that they need to do as a oversight board to ensure we have properly licensed and qualified individuals serving as LMHCs, but to ensure we have more bandwidth to do it. And that's really what it comes down to. And so I was proud to work with our Mass Mental Health Counselors Association. We have a local resident, Joe Weeks from Hanson, actually, who's been really involved in this and has done a great work on this issue. And so we filed this amendment, and it was approved. And so now we'll go to the Senate, and hopefully they'll support that as well. So an important, a small piece of the bigger picture, but I'd like to talk about that because it's an example of how we can make some positive change that'll have, some downstream impact. So, we fix this, we can get more LMHCs into the field, allow LMHCs to get their licenses renewed more easily. And that will mean there are more LMHCs out there to serve the public, seeking services. So a lot in that bill, but a really good bill. I was proud to play a small role in that, and proud to vote for that along with my colleagues, again, on a bipartisan basis, which is great to see.
And for folks who don't understand the legislative process, so the House has put this together. What happens now? Is it a matter of waiting for the Senate to review and maybe put their own version together before it goes to a conference committee to kind of meld the two together?
Yeah, so the Senate actually already did a mental health bill earlier in the session. Okay. And so we just did our mental health bill. And so now they'll go to what's called a conference committee, which is basically, a committee of six folks, Democrats and Republicans, that basically work to consolidate, to get the two branches into one consensus bill that everybody can get behind. So kind of taking all the elements of both bills and marrying them together. In some cases, that can be really challenging if you have very different bills, that have very disparate things, or maybe, have totally different approaches. In this case, I don't think that will be the case, because I think there's a lot of agreement and consensus about the importance of mental health services. And so I think, I'm sure it's always a challenge to take two bills and kind of come up with one. But I think in this case that there'll be a lot of motivation and consensus to get that done. And I'm hopeful that our amendment will be included. But frankly, regardless, I think it's going to be a good bill that's going to come out of this conference committee. So I'd expect that to happen, over the next few weeks, and I'm sure we'll get a bill done before the formal sessions wrap up later this year. So that's sort of the legislative process. So we're pretty far along in that process with this particular bill, which is great.
I know you're proud to be a part of a legislative committee that deals with labor and workforce development. Talk to me about some of the initiatives that have been worked on, and even a report that was put together and released recently about the future of work in the Commonwealth.
Yeah, so boy, it's a busy time here. So I had the privilege of so I'm the chair of the Labor and Workforce Development Committee, and through that role, got to serve as the House chair of a commission that was set up by the legislature, the Future of Work Commission, and we spent about a year and a half looking at some of the future of work issues here in Massachusetts. I know other states have done this as well, and we spent a lot of time, and I think we might have talked about this on some of our past shows together, Kevin. We had a good commission of 17 members, a bipartisan commission with some lawmakers, but also some folks from academia, some folks from the business world, some folks from higher education, some folks from labor. And we had a series of hearings. Some of them were virtual, some of them are in person. We had one actually in Plymouth that I brought to the South Shore to kind of hear our perspective, make sure we had some South Shore voices in there, because I always want to make sure that's the case. And we were also out in Chicopee in Western Mass, and we were up at MIT at the Media Labs. And, and there's obviously a lot we could talk about with that. We came out with a report that kind of highlighted some issues. And one of the things that I wanted to mention, which I think is so important, is the issue of early education and childcare, because we saw that come up again and again and again. And, especially with COVID, where we're seeing these issues where we don't have enough workers, and some people are not reentering the workforce. And so the question becomes, well, why is that the case? And in some cases, we're seeing that some women have not reentered the workforce. And in some cases, that's because of childcare issues. If you don't have childcare coverage, or it costs too much, or whatever the case may be, that makes it more challenging to go back into the workforce. Obviously, it affects men and women both. And I like to tell the story. I went to a local Head Start center in my area, and I do the reading to the kids thing, which is always a lot of fun, and get to kind of tour around and kind of talk to the teachers a little bit and so forth. And so that particular day that I was there, so they were already short one teacher because they were having workforce issues as well, trying to hire everybody. So they're already short one teacher. And that particular day, someone I think called in sick, I think probably a COVID related sickness. And so they were down two teachers. And so that meant they couldn't actually hold one of the classes that they normally held. And so that meant that all the kids who were in that class, they had to scramble. And so their parents had to scramble. And that meant maybe some of their parents, wouldn't be able to go to work, or would have to take some time off of work. And so thinking about that ripple effect of that one person who got sick, and the ripple effect that had on, a number of families, probably a dozen families on the South Shore, and then how did that impact their, colleagues and coworkers and stuff. So it just reinforced to me how important childcare is as a worker issue. Obviously, it's important as an education issue and getting kids an early start and head start and all those good things. But it's also vital as a workforce issue, because if you can't, if your kids don't have a place to go and you don't have childcare, you can't really go to work. And so that was one of the findings that really, I think we spent a lot of time on trying to put more emphasis on that. And I think we've taken some steps. I know Speaker Mariano has really prioritized this. So we prioritized this in the budget that the House put forward last month, trying to put more money into early childhood education, to making sure that some of our teachers are paid a decent wage so that we can attract and retain qualified early education teachers. Making it easier. Obviously, this isn't a lucrative field, but we want to make it more attractive for people to come into. So trying to look at things we can do like tuition repayment or tuition credits, things like that, to try to make it a more appealing career for folks, because we know what an important, kind of career it is. So that was one thing. There's a lot of things we looked at, but I think that was one of the things that if I had to kind of highlight one thing, I know we don't have a ton of time, I would talk about the childcare issue.
Could you talk to me about a new bill that would promote emerging blockchain technology industry workforce?
Yeah, so we've had we've done some work here. So I'm joined up with another colleague from the North Shore, from Rep. Kate Lipper-Garabedian, and we formed a blockchain technology caucus. So blockchain technology is sort of it's a little bit complicated, but basically a public ledger. It's distributed public ledger as probably the shortest definition I could give you. We hear this a lot as it applies to cryptocurrency. Yep. And I think that's just one application. It's an important application, but there's a lot of other applications I think that are important to look at as well, in terms of security, secure access to records, supply chain, logistics. There's a lot of interesting applications of blockchain technology. And so, we want Massachusetts to be a leader in this, as we've seen in the past, where, biotech, renewable energy, Massachusetts has really, through policy, has really led the way. And, we have a very vibrant life sciences industry in Massachusetts, largely because of some of the decisions that were made in the past to sort of nurture that industry. And so this is another kind of cutting edge industry. If you look at, like robotics or quantum computing, cybersecurity, these are sort of the next gen industries that we're looking at. And so we formed this caucus around blockchain technology to try to leverage the great assets that we already have here in Massachusetts, our thriving high-tech sector, our thriving higher education sector. We have some really smart folks at our institutes of higher learning. And so we have some natural advantages here in Massachusetts, and we want to make sure we're leveraging those and tapping into those, because other states are sort of nipping at our heels. And we want, Massachusetts to be where it's at when it comes to developing these cutting edge technologies. And so this blockchain technology caucus, we've sort of put a lot of work into that and to the workforce. And it leads me to something we just had a nice piece of news just recently, Kevin, a company called Cubic, which is located based in Quincy, so here in the South Shore, that is a startup incubator for blockchain companies. And so they got a sizable grant from the Mass Tech Collaborative. We were at the Quincy City Hall with the mayor and a number of colleagues to announce that just recently. And so they're going to be using those funds to then, in turn, foster these new startups, the companies of tomorrow, these entrepreneurs, startups, who are doing important work in this blockchain space. And we've seen, there are some pretty big companies in Massachusetts already, Algorand, Circle, billion-dollar companies that are industry leaders that create a lot of jobs, that are already doing some important things in blockchain technology. But we want to make sure we're nurturing sort of the next generation of talent. And that was what this grant was about. So a lot of different things going on in this industry, but it's an exciting and fast changing industry. And we're trying to make sure that we have the workforce pipeline to support that and to sort of encourage that as a policy from the Commonwealth.
How much of a thrill do you get out of doing your job and being able to be on the leading edge of legislation when it's important to the folks here in the Commonwealth?
No, it's such a fun job, Kevin. No, I hope it comes across in my remarks. But working on these issues, which are vitally important. But and the biggest thing as a legislator is helping people is really the core of what we do. And a lot of the cases that come in through our office, which we don't really talk about, but helping people who have a particular need, that is really what is frankly the most rewarding, is when you can solve a thorny constituent case and get somebody the help that they need. We saw during COVID that was became even more important. The volume of calls to our office really went through the roof. I have a great staff that helps me to look good and to address all those cases and help people. And that is really, I think, what brings you the joy. It's great to get a good amendment and a piece of legislation, but when you can, help solve a problem for somebody, for a family in your district, that's really, I think, the most rewarding thing. And so I'm certainly enjoying it, and I'm ready to dive back in for another 2 years.
Right, which is what I was segueing to, and that is.
I could see that segue coming. I see. I read it. See, we've been doing this for a while now.
Well, talk to me. You just had a campaign kickoff. How was that kickoff?
Oh, it was great. Yeah, we had a nice event in Pembroke, Christina's restaurant, and had a number of my colleagues from the House who joined, actually bipartisan. So that was nice too. We had some Democrat and Republican colleagues come and show their support. So I appreciate that as always. And looking forward to, kind of running for re-election this fall. I always say the best way to keep your job is to do your job. And so, my time I'm going to spend doing my job. And I think the voters, have seen that I do a good job, and hopefully they'll continue to feel that way. And I'll continue to do it. And but I'll be on the ballot this fall, and looking forward to running for re-election. And there's a lot of work to do before then. So I feel like it's kind of premature to talk about the campaign, but certainly I'll be looking forward to that come October and November.
Anything you want to say in closing as we wrap up our segment here on CrossTalk?
Yeah, no, well, it's lots going on. In fact, I gotta probably go now because I have to go greet our visitor, a special visitor that's coming into the State House, and we have the transportation bond bill that's coming up, which will also, I should mention, provide some important funding for our cities and towns for local roadway projects, which I know are vital. I often hear about potholes and sidewalks and road resurfacing, and so this will help to make that a little easier for them as well. But no, I would just say, Kevin, in closing, I know we're just about out of time. Folks need help, feel free to reach out to our State House office. I know you can probably put those numbers on the screen with your magic crayon, or the website, joshcutler.com, or come to one of my mobile office hours. I do it every Friday, different senior centers around the district. And, happy to hear from folks, whether it's in person, on the phone, virtually, or via email. So don't be shy.
Representative, as always, thank you for your time and sitting down and talking about some of the things that are happening, not only at the State House, but in and around the district.
Thanks, Kevin. Come on up, guys. Thank you, Madam Speaker. Come on up, April. Allison, come up, join me. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. I'm here with a special visitor from my district that I wanted to introduce. I'm joined by Representative Allison Sullivan and our good colleague, Senator Michael Brady. I'll introduce her in a moment. I want to first acknowledge we have our Whitman-Hanson School Superintendent, Jeff Samazniak, over in the House, along with our school principal, Dr. Chris Jones. Welcome, both of you gentlemen. We appreciate all that you do for education in Whitman-Hanson. I'm here with a student who graduated just recently from Whitman-Hanson Regional High School, April Keys, who is here with her family to the left. And April is a remarkable young woman. She is a class valedictorian, a student athlete, National Honor Society member, a captain of her track team. She'll be attending Harvard University in the fall. But the reason that we asked Allison to come before us today and to take this opportunity to recognize her is because April has overcome April has a speech impediment, and she has stuttering issues that she's grappled with for most of her life, and she's been very forthcoming about this. And she had the courage to overcome that stuttering, that fear of stuttering and public speaking, to give the class valedictorian speech before the Whitman-Hanson graduating class. I encourage you to take a listen to it if you can. It was an inspirational remarks. She got a standing ovation from the members there. And so we thought, here's a great example of a young person who's excelling in every area and overcoming adversity, overcoming challenges, and really shining. And so we wanted to take this opportunity and to have all of you have an opportunity to hear from her and to recognize her. her. So at this time, I would like to recognize Representative Allison Sullivan, who has a citation that we'd like to share with April. Stand in the front, stand right here.
Thank you, April, and thank you, Rep. Cutler, for those kind words of April. I was actually at the graduation, and her speeches and her remarks were very powerful and moving. She talked about how for a while she didn't use her voice, and then she found her voice and was able to use it in ways that she was able to achieve valedictorian by a big margin, from my understanding. It was not a fight for the top in her case. So we do have a citation here, and I'd like to read it and honor you. Be it hereby known to all that the Massachusetts House of Representatives offers its sincere congratulations to April Keyes in recognition of your outstanding academic achievements, bravery, and inspiring words in leading the Whitman-Hanson High School class of 2022. The entire membership extends its very best wishes and expresses the hope for future good fortune and continued success in all your endeavors. Given this 23rd day of June 2022, signed by the Speaker of the House, Ronald Mariano, offered by your state representative, Josh Cutler, and myself. Congratulations, and it's very well deserved. Thank you.
Yeah, in April, we have one more.
I should have. Senator.
Everything starts in the House, so we let the House lead, and then it gets over to the Senate. So this is official citation from the State Senate. Be it known that the Massachusetts Senate hereby extends its congratulations to April Keyes in recognition of your outstanding academic achievements, bravery, and inspiring words in leading the Whitman-Hanson High School Call of 2022. This is signed by the Senate President Karen Spilka, the Clerk in the Senate Michael Hurley, myself, Mike Brady. And again, congratulations.
That's another episode of CrossTalk, 6th Plymouth District. Until next time, have yourself a great day.